Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. In this week's show, we're going to recap Polaris 23, the women's under 66 kilogram GP that probably has the most stacked names we have had in women's GP, maybe ever, but definitely in the last couple of years. We're also going to talk a little about the Sogi Invitational, a couple of the matches on that card, and then we're going to preview some upcoming things, talk about some other big news that happened. And I think that's it. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, my co-host,
Miranda.
Hey, Miranda.
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing good. A little late. We just finished training. Doing a Sunday show, so of always, Monday morning is going to roll around. News is going to come out. It's not going to be in this show. It'll be in next week's show. But speaking of news,
I think the suspensions came out like right after.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, they came out like Wednesday.
The suspension. So big news. The biggest news is 5 athletes tested positive for what you got down.
Yeah.
5 athletes tested positive at Nogi Worlds, or outside of competition for Nogi Worlds for the IBJJF through WADA.
Because they fled from Nogi Worlds.
Yeah.
And they were tracked down by USADA.
So we got the 5 athletes. We got Igor Nascimento, De Costa Feliz. We got Jonathan Gracie. We got Cyborg. We got Jose Henrique Cardosa. And we got Wagner Hosha, all suspended for 3 years. So there's a lot to unpack here. It's all kind of stuff that we've known, we suspected. Wagner showed up, refused to take the test, and then a couple of weeks ago, I basically went on Twitter and was like, "Yep, I'm older. I'm on testosterone because I'm older and I want to feel good and like train with my kids and do this sport at a high level as an older grappler. This is what I'm doing." They're kind of very upfront about it, and he in refusing to do the test, was it December 23rd, I think, or like the day or two before Christmas, they caught up with him where we're in Florida. He refused to take the test. Cyborg also refused to take the test. They tested him in Miami. I forget exactly who refused and who took it at Worlds themselves. But
I want to say it was the Igor.
Yeah.
And Jonatas were the two that took
at Worlds. The
Worlds.
Others were done out of competition.
I don't remember if Cardosa. No, because I think Cardosa might have took it, and Cardosa was like rocking everything.
Yeah.
Like,
so we also found out what they tested positive for, and so open disclaimer here, not disclaimer. Like, we on the Grappling Rewind, we've covered the sport for a while now.
We are a fan of steroids.
We're not, it's always been in kind of our position that it's not our place to pass judgment on what professional athletes in the space do to compete and perform at that level when almost all of these events are untested. It's a combat sport. It's hard on your body. And we are in the business of sports entertainment.
You are paying to do the competition.
Yeah. And so we are in the Grappling Rewind. We want to talk about exciting and fun matches. Yeah. So it kind of is in our best interest to be okay with all that stuff because we get athletes that can perform and they can run and do these crazy matches and tournaments that are very, very hard on the body. They can perform at a higher level. They can come in more technically prepared, more rested,
and
more rehabbed.
And the other thing is, some of it, they tell you ahead of time they're going to test you.
Yeah.
So if you know that they're going to test you. Yeah. And you still compete in said tournament. Yeah. Don't you realize at that point that you're possibly getting stuck?
But we've popped. People have popped for WADA and USADA. I always forget what organization IBJJF uses and used to use.
USADA is current.
Yeah, USADA.
WADA is probably the former.
So the World Anti-Doping Agency, the U.S. I think IBJJF still uses WADA.
USADA is who had all the information.
They use USADA now.
Yeah,
so
I went through USADA.
Somebody pops on IBJJF every other year since they started testing in 13 or 16 or something like
pops.
That. And every other year someone pops. And until this year, really until this test, the IBJ, some history on doping in the IBJJF and testing. Until this last year, or this year, depending on what you hear, IBJJF only used to test in one tournament, and they tested the winning athlete in the GI Worlds, and that was the only athlete that tested. Yeah. And every other year, one of the 18 winners popped.
Yeah.
That should give you an indication of what
always
the sports
somebody.
Looked like. It's also an ADCC year. ADCC publicly states they do not test. It's we can't track down all the athletes that are competing and doing everything worldwide because we can't put everyone on a uniform playing field. the playing field is we don't test, which is kind of always been their standard. It's an 80cc year. A lot of these guys were in 80cc, and historically, IBJJF has not tested in their no-gi events. They have also never tested until this test out of competition, and they have never tested anyone that is not just a winner. So now they're testing they're testing podium places too, not just winners. So this round of testing where they have 5 athletes that they've, suspended is pretty unique for a lot of reasons in that.
But they had to, the gentleman that did not do finals and that ran. Yeah. You kind of had to test them.
And it's, I get what you get there. As a guy that watches a lot of jiu-jitsu and sports commentary, like I want to kind of be upfront with, it's not really my place to pass a moral judgment on what a guy uses, what a guy doesn't use. For me, I understand that's a section and a part of the sport for most of the people, especially at the highest level. If you've been in these rooms, you've been around people that compete at this level, it's something that's discussed. It's part of the professional side of the sport. I kind of personally wish it wasn't as demonized, so you could have an open conversation about kind of the benefits, the downsides, and like you could be a little more open, but not make it all hush hush.
Yeah.
Because people are going to do what covers their body the best. I mean, it's a tale as old as time. Do you want to see really fun, exciting matches, or do you want to only have people that are competing on the merits of the genetics that they were gifted in the kind of shake of the stick that they got?
And people are always going to find a way to get around.
So we have 5 athletes that are tested. I'm not one to pass judgment. I think it's awesome when we get guys that are like Overeem and Vitor, personally, because I enjoy the entertainment and spectacle side of it, and that's kind of why I watch a lot of the sport. So it's not mine to pass judgment. I think I'm probably, depending on who you talk to in the community, an outlier when it kind of comes to that viewpoint. But I always, when we have this discussion on the show, I always want to kind of bring that perspective of like, hey, here's my perspective. It's not my place to, have a moral standing for what these guys that are competing at this level decide.
The thing is, if you're going to damage your body, you should be able to damage your body.
Yeah, man.
Because this shit's going to damage your body long term.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu. I had spine surgery at 29.
Well, but I mean, not even jiu-jitsu in general, like long-term steroid use. Like, who knows what happens?
Yeah, I mean,
none of us really know what happens.
Look at bodybuilding.
Well,
it's a
heart
awesome,
attack.
it's a
heart
awesome
attacks.
quick ride.
Heart attacks.
So let's run through what they were on because I think it's interesting. And if you haven't read through it already, this is the news section of the show, and these are some of the biggest athletes in the sport. Miranda, you did the translation for the names.
Yeah, I had to look things up because I was like, I don't know what the hell that means.
I read,
I know the names, but I don't know those names.
So I read the list, and I was like, there was like 2 of them. I was like, what is that? But everyone was like, I know that, and that, and that.
So, you said it's Igor.
I think it's Igor.
Igor.
So I've always
so Igor just tests positive for testosterone, and they test for testosterone and metabolites.
Yeah.
And they can test if it's natural occurring testosterone or if it's
synthetic testosterone.
Yeah, which I don't know exactly how that works. I tried to figure that out.
I am not a doping expert. This is
not
my field.
But I was curious how they would know the difference. But I think the metabolites are different.
The metabolites are different. Metabolizes and leaves different trace metabolites in your system.
So Jonatas was on testosterone and nandrolone.
Yeah.
And Cyborg was just on testosterone, which surprises me because I expected him to be on the freaking
because his name is Cyborg.
Everything.
Like you kind of like your nickname isn't implied that you're like
just physically look at him.
Yeah,
anyway,
man, you're 42. Is he 42 now?
Yeah,
you're 42 and you look like Cyborg. Like good for you, dog. Like you.
Yeah.
Like good on you, man.
And then Jose Henrique, he tested for nandrolone, androsterone, tren, superdol, and testosterone.
Yeah.
He is the cocktail. Mm-hmm. That's a full cocktail right there.
Who was on Mastodon? That was him, right?
Yeah, that was him.
Okay.
That was him. That was superdol. That's the
that's the other name for Mastodon. Yeah.
And then Wagner just refused. So who knows what Wagner's
But
on.
Wagner also publicly stated
he said he's
testosterone,
on test,
so
but he didn't test. So
he didn't test, so we're not sure. In other news, Nicky Rod's test has not come back yet.
Yeah,
so
which
everyone's kind of curious
normally it's
that.
like 2 weeks. It's like a 2-week turnaround.
Yeah, it depends
for
on
those tests.
Depends on the test, and so it's been a busy week for IBJJF.
Did you test the more plates, less dates guy to see if he actually posted it?
I haven't checked yet, but again,
that's him.
This was the news. Miranda, do you have any kind of thoughts? You kind of said
I don't
earlier.
care.
Yeah.
You gonna do it? Do it. I don't care.
Yeah, not my place to pass judgment.
Just if you're gonna go into a tournament that you know they're gonna test for, then you just got to deal with the fact that if you test positive, you have to take a suspension.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. It's kind of the way it works. Wagner and Cyborg are both in their 40s now. We do not see Cyborg come back at 45 and compete as definitely not as an adult anymore.
Yeah.
I would guess that he's probably,
The other thing is, if these gentlemen would have just went to the Masters divisions, no one gives a shit about the Masters divisions. They could have done anything they wanted to, and no one would have cared. Because I swear more testosterone is being used by that Masters division than anywhere else.
It is a neat looking division. Occasionally 35 plus, you're like, whoa, these guys look healthy.
They look healthy.
So that's what's going on. Again, it is your own moral judgment or decision making for how you perceive it. It's our job on the show to kind of talk about, what got reported. Hopefully we see these guys in more super fights. The sport isn't. I think the sport's not clean.
No.
Like, we know the sport's not clean. If you're testing 18 guys and every other year someone pops, like, we know the sport's not clean. This is not, I don't think, going to clean up the sport. It just pulls athletes out of the pool.
Craig Jones made a comment that when they tell you ahead of time that they're going to test you, that it's an IQ test, not an actual if you're on drugs test.
That's been a saying in MMA since the Affliction days.
Yeah.
Since before that.
Well, now USADA's crazy because they chase after people.
So with that being said, Chris Weidman had a super fight versus Owen Livesey and came out with his USADA 50 clean test jacket on.
Is that what that was?
That was the jacket. Yeah, that was
the
USADA jacket.
I just saw it said UFC on the back of it, and I didn't know exactly what that.
Yeah, it was it's a USADA, which is the organization that the UFC uses for their testing program. They have various incentives, and one of them after 50 clean tests is you get this 50 clean test jacket. And that's what Chris Weidman came out in, and I thought it was very funny.
Well, it's kind of funny with the person he was going against.
Owen's jacked, and Polaris doesn't test, and I'm all for Polaris.
Yeah, I'm all
testing.
for it. So go right ahead.
Any other news we had this week? That was sort of the big news.
No, I think that was the only thing people have been talking about crazily and acting like they didn't realize.
Acting like I feel like there were less people pretending to be shocked than I anticipated.
Yeah, there's a bunch of butthurt people. There's a whole day where I stopped looking at the internet because people were butthurt, and I was like, dude, really?
It's jiu-jitsu, guys. I don't know. Maybe because we do this, I've done this for so long, I have a different perspective and maybe a little more I think definitely have a more behind the curtain view than most people do, but
you live in this world long enough and you know people. We all know people.
Yeah, it's a small little sport we do, and
we all know the clinics, we all know the people, we all know where they are.
Certain guys get jacked really quick, and you're like, man, you recovered from that injury really quickly, and all of a sudden you're put on 20 pounds of muscle. I cannot wait to see you on super fights.
Yeah,
so.
or you're 46 years old, and you're in the best shape of your life.
Yeah.
Was not the Bowflex that you have in your house.
Mm-hmm. So, steroids happen. Welcome to jiu-jitsu. If this is your first encounter with it, it is very much
learn to cycle on and off.
It is very much part of the game. Pass your own judgment, talk to your own people, and live your life in the way that you feel is morally correct. Moving on, because I don't have anything else to beat this dead horse with. What do you want to talk about? You have any other news this week?
Are we doing Polaris? Said that their main event in June.
I am amped for this.
In London?
So London, main event, June
3rd. This is my child. No, my kid was born not that day, the day before, but okay.
So, Ash Williams versus Ryan Hall.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it is. Sorry. I was thinking of dates. I was trying to figure out if I messed up my kid's birthday or not.
We'll preview this when we get closer.
Yeah.
I want to say in the news section of this show, this is kind of a rough match for Ryan Hall. Ash Williams has looked phenomenal at Grapple Fest, at ADCC World Championships, at ADCC Trials, on Polaris, on everything that we have seen Ash Williams on.
He was at No-Gi Worlds because I kept on looking at him because I thought I knew who he was, but I didn't know who he was. And he was there. He did really well.
Yeah. Dude's been on fire recently. Ryan Hall has been actually extremely inactive from grappling since 2016, 2017.
Whenever he started fighting, he kind of stopped taking
when he kind of resurged back in fighting. Because he took like a 6-year break from fighting and then came back in. He had some fights very early in his career, and then took some fights that he doesn't even really count. Yeah. And then he comes back in MMA later in his career and kind of goes on his UFC run. It's a big X factor. Like we kind of are close to 50-50 here in Maryland, and you pop into 50-50. You've been there like 3 times.
Like 3 or 4 times this summer. It's really weird. Like every once in a while this happens to me and I show up in places. But they've been pulling in a lot of really good talent for seminars, and I'm all about that. So I've been down there.
So I think it's, again, Ryan Hall is phenomenal, but we just have not seen him. He was supposed to do ADCC. He pulled out of ADCC. He's been injured off and on for the last close to 5 years.
Yeah.
Give or take. I mean, he's been kind of very selective with his fights. I am amped that we're going to see and be able to talk about a Ryan Hall match. Ash Williams is a tough dude to kind of come back into it with. He's a super modern game dude that has just been giving everyone problems for a long time, but on that world stage for the last 18 months.
Yeah. Oh, you know what we forgot to talk about?
What? We're still in the news section, technically.
Gordon going to AIGA.
Yeah, in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, and signing with one.
So he signed back with I actually didn't pull this up. So
I
Gordon
watched it. It was a horrible. It was a whole long press conference, and it was translated, and it took forever. And half the time, I don't know if Gordon understood what they were asking him because he was making answers that really didn't make any sense. But their questions didn't make any sense. It was interesting.
Gordon back in one. So Gordon, if you don't know the history of this contract. Gordon signed a non-exclusive, apparently one of the few non-exclusive grappling contracts that ONE offered. When RUN started to open up their grappling divisions, he was supposed to compete in ONE FC.
Yeah, it was right when Andre Goval.
It was before that. It was almost a year before that, if not even longer. And then, so it was a big contract with ONE FC before ONE FC had all their grappling contracts, and they were doing it with any frequency. Gordon never ended up competing for ONE, and ONE had a stipulation on the contract that was basically, and Gordon talks about this in more length on Rogan if you're kind of more curious about the details of the contract that he gave at the time. It was a non-exclusive grappling contract that gave Gordon the option, or basically, if Gordon was to ever make the switch to MMA, he had to do it in ONE FC as part of the contract. And if he was on a contract with ONE, which makes sense because they are on-ramping Cade and Ty kind of into that feeder. They did it with Yuri. They did it with Buchecha. They did it with, who else? A bunch of guys. If you're a really good grappler and you want to, Gary Tonin, you want to get kind of on-ramped into MMA, ONE FC is a great platform to do that. And I've been watching a ton of ONE FC recently, and it's been awesome. So Gordon is allegedly now signed back with ONE FC. Now that they have divisions, they have title holders, they're doing more grappling, we might see some really good Gordon Ryan matches in ONE FC.
And he was doing,
and I'm amped for it.
He was doing questions from the crowd, and then they were doing video questions and the video question was Craig Jones.
Yeah, I saw that.
It was hilarious. I didn't think it was real, and then I realized, oh no, Craig Jones was really harassing.
Craig Jones is starting to troll, and it's
and he was trolling in a legit press conference where people did not understand if he was trolling or not, which was the most hilarious part of it. He started talking about Borat, and you're in Uzbekistan.
Craig Jones has been Craig Jones has been jiu-jitsu's gift to trolling recently, and it's been great to watch.
It's been fabulous.
I think that beats the news to death. There's no other news this week.
I think that's it.
Okay, let's move on to a tournament that I'm super amped to talk about. We don't get a chance to talk about a lot of big women's GPs, and I think aside from ADCC, this is probably the biggest, most stacked women's tournament that we have had invitational in maybe since Who's Number One, but I think this is possibly even more stacked than Who's Number One because you have both your under 60 kilogram women champion in Ffion Davies, and you have your over 60 kilogram champion in Amy Campo. You have multiple other entrants. You have Brianna Ste-Marie, a medalist at ADCC. You have just
I wonder how much Campo had to cut for this to make 66.
They talked about her in her first match, what weight she was at and what weight she walked around. I think she was at the limit, but I don't know how much she had to actually cut. But
Grindatti had to cut 23 pounds.
Yeah, Maggie cut a ton of weight. 23 pounds. And there's a picture of her. She posted on her Instagram of her on the scale, and it was you could tell that she had to work to get down there.
Yeah.
It was cool because, I mean, we very rarely get a stacked bracket like this on both sides, and 66 kilograms is big enough that a lot of your mid-sized 60 kilogram athletes can maybe not cut as much weight, but also the ones that are under 60 can still get up to 66 and be comfortable.
What 66 is.
And then your over 66 kilogram women or over 60 kilogram women a lot of times can make 66. And so it allows for us to have this really cool women's tournament.
66 is 145.
Yeah. It was great. I loved the tournament. Where do you want to start? I think I want to run through all these matches.
Okay. We just start from the beginning?
Let's start from the beginning. Let's start with your notes because I can pull up these notes.
Ffion versus Jara.
Yeah. So Jara was the only one that missed weight.
Yeah, and she missed by almost 2 pounds. A little less than 2 pounds.
And we talked about this last week because Jara historically competes up about 6 kilos above this weight. 72 kilos, I think.
Yeah.
So it's if you historically compete at that weight, I wasn't really surprised.
She normally competes at 79 kilos.
Yeah.
So that's 13 kilos.
So that's 20 pounds above this. And so what you on the pre-show, we talked a little about this. You had more information than I had about the cut.
Yeah. What they had said was that she was stopped for her safety, which meant the doctors came in and stopped her 2 pounds away. I don't know exactly.
Yeah, close enough for me.
But she was by herself. She didn't have a coach with her. So my assumption is that means you're cutting by yourself,
which is super dangerous to do and very
well. Besides the fact that it's probably not it's not a good thing to do.
Yeah, and because you're cutting that much weight too.
Because generally speaking, when you're cutting, they're gonna stop you. So you keep the doctors away because they're gonna stop you. You know what I mean?
That's kind of the game.
MMA.
You deal with your camp deals with the doctor, and you wave at the doctor, and then you kind of keep the fighter away as much as possible, and then you kind of gear the fighter up to interface with the doctor.
Because you look like shit when you're making that way.
Yeah, because you're dying.
Yeah, because when I was cutting in the tub for ADCC, I had a teammate pick me up out of the tub because I would pass out when I tried to stand up. So yeah, that was we were all there.
That was a fun ADCC
we were all
event. There. So she doesn't make the weight. She got close. I was happy she was in it, even though she didn't make the weight. She got close. Yeah. You're within 2 pounds in a bracket like this. I'm She also didn't look enormous on the day. She looked bigger on the day, but it wasn't one of those you obviously missed by 10 pounds and they still let you come in. She got very close. She was medically discontinued from doing it, but they still let her do the tournament. I appreciated that, so we didn't have to get a replacement that would not be of her caliber on the day. And her first match with Ffion Davies, again, it's one of the first matches that we've seen her against one of the first matches I have seen her against top level black belts. I know that she's competed in some nice stuff so far, but I haven't got a chance to see it on the show. This was sort of my first foray into her game.
Back up for a second. This was a normal sub only match, sort of, because they gave you a point for any thing that you did,
for anything that would be scoring, instead of giving you 2 points for a takedown or 3 points for a guard pass or 2 points for a sweep. It's just a point.
It's a point for everything.
Polaris has done this before. I actually I kind of go back and forth on. We've seen other organizations do this point style. I kind of like it. It makes it really easy to follow, and it's you can look at, and this match ends 4-1 in favor of Ffion. Yeah. You can go, Ffion did 3 more things than Jara was able to do. It makes it really easy to figure out. And from a viewer perspective, I think that's one thing Polaris has really worked on, is making it understandable to the viewer. And they've with their squads events and with this event, they've made a lot of changes and tried a lot of different things. And I really appreciate that they are continuing to try to innovate to make it more viewer friendly. I like organizations that use different points, but I also, for this event, I thought it worked really well. There was no match where I was oh, that.
And they were 10-minute matches, so they had the possibility of going to be a really boring match. Yeah. And they weren't. None of them were.
All of them were great. So Ffion wins this with basically a come up and just nice positional work over Jara. She kind of got ahead of Jara towards the end. And just sort of was able to impose, and Jara was never able to get control of Ffion at the mid range and get a hold of her to sweep and to start setting anything up. And I was just really impressed with Fion's poise on top, and you're fighting a bigger woman, which Ffion is absolutely no stranger to. We've seen her fight Taina Porfirio, and that's almost like 100-pound difference between the two of them, if not more. And Ffion looked good in that match. Jara being a little bigger, Ffion performed as we have seen her do in the past, and really impressive. Any kind of particular technical notes that you got on the match?
Nope. Right. She did exactly what she needed to do. She didn't try to stand too long with her. She sat, tried to sweep. The come up was really the only wrestling that she tried.
Yeah.
I mean, she was
successful with it.
Yeah. She's very successful with it.
I was impressed because I don't really ever think, I always think of her for her judo game.
Yeah.
And I forget she spent so much time with JT now, and that into ADCC that's something that she worked and like actively developed for the past couple of years. To see it on display here, I'm like, oh yeah, right, your wrestle up game is now a part of and a factor for your sweep game in your come up game. It was cool to see her be able to do that here versus Jara.
And they didn't use the IBJJF rule that you have to be on your feet for 3 seconds before you go back down to get the points for the takedown. It's a weird IBJJF rule that you learn. But anyway.
Yep. So that was good. Ffion looked good in the match. Jara looked good too. Again, I want to see more from Jara. And it was great. It was great to kind of have an excuse to... I'm going to now have an excuse to go back and watch some of her earlier matches because I hope this propels her onto a stage where we see her more frequently. Next match, we had Elisabeth Clay defeating...
I almost said Clay Guida. I wrote Clay.
Elisabeth Clay. Clay, yeah. For years, you're just like, Clay Guida. Like, that's the guy.
I mean, he has long hair.
He does have long hair. Miranda. Elisabeth Clay defeats Joanna Dineva via reverse triangle. Elisabeth Clay from bell to sub. This was an interesting match in that they said, is it Dineva? Dineva is how it can be pronounced.
They said Dinerva's game is a turtle game, and she likes to roll under from turtle. And
which is like good if you're Tellus.
This is not a situation where that went well.
it wasn't the best. So
do not do that to Elisabeth Clay.
Do not do that to Elisabeth Clay.
Because she will take your back.
Kind of repeatedly.
Over and over again. She tried to go plot her.
She did in this match. That was so Elisabeth Clay from the jump was on the attack, and there were 2 or 3 different times where you could tell Clay was so comfortable in the subs that she was throwing up. And Clay, to her credit, does have Gogo Plata finishes. Like I think she has on commentary we were talking about she has 3 of them. And we've seen her. I've seen the matches where she does it. Yeah. She has a good Gogo Plata and she sets it up in a way.
She's also bendy as hell. So she can just kind of bend that leg in front and she doesn't worry about her knee exploding.
She worked for the armbar here repeatedly. She went top control. At every point where Dineva would attempt to get back to something, Clay would either transition off of the position into a position she wanted to be in, or she would transition to another sub and then force Dineva to continue to defend it.
The back reverse triangle.
Yeah, this was
her reverse triangle.
Her setup here was really cool. The first set. This was the
she did it twice.
The first setup was the one that I actually really enjoyed because I watched it with Rachel and we were watching.
And your wife likes the back triangles.
She plays this game. Yeah. It has been a year of me having and coming to appreciate this technique. Yeah. Being drilled and then being hit on me. And if someone's really good at it, like Elisabeth Clay, I cannot imagine how hard it is because the weird thing about the reverse triangle, and Clay sets it up when she's kind of already on the back in a really neat way. She has a beautiful foot pummel across the center where she's able to lock the triangle over. And I was really impressed that she didn't get caught in Dineva's legs as she came across, but she keeps her knees high enough where it prevented the kind of trap in the half guard. While she pummeled the arms under and kept control of the arms. For the reverse triangle, like you do it, like it's done in the first of the 2. Okay. You see Clay go for the arm a lot because that reverse triangle is really, really hard to hit for the choke because you have to spin them down. You have to get more square with them to kind of collapse everything. But the arm, and I'm a guy and I have torn shoulders, is so available there because it gets trapped and you either can yank it across your center line.
Oh, you just made me, I just remembered I did this to one of our other Grappling Rewind people today. Yep. I should have gone after his legs. Damn it. Okay.
Your arm gets stuck in the front, and then you can kind of yank back, and because the one leg is trapped behind the shoulder, it doesn't give you the ability as the person trapped in the reverse triangle, or the triangle from the back, to move your arm and prevent it from attacking the shoulder. Dineva did a really good job here of, like, the arm was fully extended, and Clay tried to use the heel hook grip under the elbow, which you can use to sort of fight and attack the shoulder.
Yeah.
And it's one of the few grips you ever see someone use, like a heel hook grip on the arm, because in this position, because the shoulder is compressed with Elisabeth Clay's legs, you can attack it by ripping at the elbow. And it's a really unique submission that we don't get a chance to talk about a lot on the show. And it was cool to see, that's what she's going for. And it's something we've seen Clay do before, where she'll actually loop under the arm and finish it like a mirror lock. Dineva, to her credit, is able to get out of it, is able to roll through as Clay sits back for the arm here. Clay goes to the go-go plata, comes up, eventually Dineva pulls everything out, and then Clay goes back again to the triangle from the back. The triangle from the back is such a pain in the ass, because what you want to do is you want to dip your head back to get out, like you're in like a bow and arrow choke.
And as you dip your head back, you tighten the triangle.
Yes, and you allow them to get their leg across. And so it's this really counterintuitive movement where every other position that is set up in this way, going back and trying to get your back flat to the mat, is the correct thing to do. But in the reverse triangle, especially with how, like, the guys that learned it from John Danaher and how Elisabeth Clay does it, is them putting their head back opens up your legs to be able to lock it and get it across. And it's been a year of Rachel doing this to me, and, like, learning all of the little setups and tricks and techniques of, like, you want to do this in every other position, but because they're going to swing their leg across for their reverse triangle, you have to do a different thing. And it tends to leave your arms out, and it's a really, really great sub that we don't see used a ton. It is really cool to see Elisabeth Clay, finish it late into the match. Credit to Dineva here. Almost at 9 minutes of a 10-minute match. Yeah. So it was great. Any other thoughts?
Nope, that was great.
All right, moving on to the next match. Amy Campo defeats Julia Maele via rear naked choke in just over half the match, a little under 6 minutes. Campo's terrifying.
She is when she gets going.
When Campo can impose on you, it kind of reminds me. It's funny because Campo is the one to beat Gabby Garcia in ADCC, and, like, basically took her crown and then became the champion at over 60 kilograms in ADCC. Has a very similar, not game, but style of control when she is imposing on top. Like, Campo is definitely on the bigger side of women at 60 kilograms, but she's not enormous. But she pressures into you and into your hips and into your shoulders like she is. Yeah. Like, it looks, and especially versus someone like Maele, who's a trials winner in ADC, for ADCC in her own right, very good grappler, the way that she was able to control Julia here and pressure her down, like, in a sustained kind of way to prevent any sort of post coming up or the arms coming up or the legs coming out, was... I have to imagine that is absolutely exhausting for her to be in that position like that.
Julia.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because you're kind of broken down, and you're trying to be able to get to a hip and get to your back and, like, kind of be able to get a turn at all. And Campo is just on you, smothering you, pressing into you. As soon as she closes that distance past your legs, in the half guard and beyond, she's just into you. Yeah. And in a way that you typically see with much, much bigger grapplers. It's usually not something you see of someone, like, that doesn't have the size advantage that Campo has. Campo is on the smaller size of people that you ever see impose this kind of game, and she is the most effective person to do it in the modern style of women's jiu-jitsu.
I agree.
You think that's correct?
Yes.
She just grinds you out. So... she gets the renegade choke late. Again, wasn't quick. The transition at the end was nice. She switches the hands very quickly as she kind of takes the back. Yeah. And then chokes and finishes.
Was this the one with no hooks? No.
That was the...
What was that?
See, Campo hits 2 renegade chokes from the back.
Oh, yeah. Okay, no. Brianna Ste-Marie is
that was the no hooks one.
That was the no hooks one.
This
one was hooks in.
This was sort of like they were both kind of like belly down in that position.
Yeah,
I
think this one because the first time she had like a halfback the first time, and then the second time she had both her hooks in.
Yeah, halfback basically instead of having both hooks in the center, you have one hook on
one hook in front of the hip and the other one behind, and you can lock your feet if your legs are long enough. Yeah, and you put pressure into the hip. So you put pressure on the hips in the direction that you would turn to get out of the submission.
Yeah, and it kind of sets up like you can set up like a twister if you're on the same side, and it kind of the halfback is a position that you will set that up from. But in modern day, a lot of times people use it from the crackdown. They'll set up a halfback on someone, and they'll go under the armpit and then over the back of the head and kind of crank down your head and neck, and it'll force you to dip to one side, and they can spin the choke under. And so we're seeing people use the halfback a lot more in the last couple of years. Like previously it was something that you kind of had to go to when you couldn't get the back. We're seeing a lot more people use, especially with Campo being taller, using it to kind of spiral people out and flatten and control, and then be able to get either the hooks in after the fact or just use it to choke and finish. Yeah. And the back has become, like there's more stuff to do on the back than ever. And I think because everyone kind of became so happy with the body triangle, and then more organizations started scoring the body triangle, it opened up, maybe I can use different control pieces in this position versus probably 5 years ago. It was just hooks or nothing, and that was really all 5 or 6 years ago, all people trained. Yeah. And then the body triangle came to prominence, and I was like, this is really good. Even if it's not scoring, it's worth it to have a body triangle because I have better control. And then that opened up like stuff like the halfback, where it's like it's non-scoring back control, but it's controlling enough where it is useful to have it and use it, and I'll take the control of the back position versus just looking for the hooks.
And it's not hard to get your hooks in once you're there.
Yeah, especially if you control the hips that you're talking about.
You can always slide them in and then slide them back out. So
yep. So that was that match. Campo looked amazing and really controlled the entire match. Next match we had Brianna Ste-Marie defeating Maggie Grindatti via armbar. Again, a little over 5 minutes into the match. This had the grossest moment of the tournament in it.
I don't know. Fion's foot. Did you see the picture of Fion's?
I didn't see the picture of the foot. I saw the finish.
At the very end, they showed it. And if you looked at her foot was not going the right direction, I don't believe. Yeah. I don't know. That bothered me more because I'm a bendy person, so my shoulders will do things that probably they shouldn't do. But at the same time, it was kind of ridiculous. So it was a little crazy.
Brianna Ste-Marie, Maggie Grindatti's in top half guard.
Yeah.
And Brianna Ste-Marie, by the way, so they were saying Saint Marie. We've said Ste-Marie. We've butchered her name. We've called her Saint Marie for a long time. She has the French spelling Ste-Marie. I am just going to call her Brianna Ste-Marie.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to call her now. We've called her a bunch of stuff. We've heard her pronounced it a bunch of different ways. Moving forward,
I should have asked her when I met her.
Next time I see her, I'm going to ask her. But until I do, I'm just going to call her Brianna Ste-Marie because that's what they were calling her on commentary. Yeah. And Polaris commentary is really good. So I'm going to call her that moving forward. She grabbed a Kimura on Maggie Grindatti and bent the arm. I've been live at a couple arm breaks. I think 3 of them.
The one that hits the internet every couple years, that was Frank, right? Frank Rosenthal, like cracking the shit out of someone's arm, where it like pops.
Yeah.
Like where it like significantly is like, and you. Yeah.
I think that was Frank Rosenthal.
I think it was Frank.
That was.
Because that one goes around every couple years. Yes. Like somebody passes it around. I'm like, yep.
If you've been grappling long enough, you've seen a couple of these. I've seen, I think, 3 of these live.
I heard one.
Yeah, I was. That when you heard, I was like 8 feet. I was a couple feet away from that.
I was a couple people behind.
Rachel was about to compete, and we were standing like Matt's side.
Yeah,
and we watched that. So I have watched these. You've done grappling long enough. You've seen all the catastrophic injury videos, the Kimura videos. Maybe not the worst, but definitely up there.
Yeah,
this was. It looked like 5 degrees away from being one of those videos. Yeah. Maggie Grindatti is to her credit, game as fuck.
Yeah.
And bendy as shit, because she fought that Kimura, the first one, farther than I have seen any other black belt fight that in a long time and not get it broken. It was wild.
Yeah, and she was controlled, so it wasn't like she could really do much. She could invert the way she did, but that was about it.
That was amazing.
Her leg was stuck.
So that whole sequence was, go back and watch this whole sequence, because this is a masterclass in late stage defense.
Yeah.
And a masterclass from Brianna Ste-Marie in how to control this position and to continue to try to work for the Kimura. And so in the post-fight, Brianna Ste-Marie talks about, she goes, I didn't have any more ability to push her over. If you get someone in a super deep Kimura and they are flexible enough, you can get to a weird angle where you don't have any additional force and distance to push them away until you have to move your body. Maggie Grindatti is in this Kimura. She's deep. She inverts on her shoulders.
Yeah.
Normally what you can do here is you can run the leg out. You can get your leg out. And you can come back and you can basically have this Kimura race where you can either get counter armbarred or you can counter armbar or counter Kimura off of this sequence.
Yeah.
Brianna Ste-Marie goes, oh, I know what Grindatti's going to do. I'm going to hook this leg as she goes to invert. I'm going to trap her on her shoulder there, and then I'm going to have the leverage to push in this Kimura. Grindatti sees that, moves her hips and shoulders out a little bit to prevent Brianna Ste-Marie from having enough distance to push through the Kimura to finish that last, 5% of rotation, because you're on the end of the fulcrum on the arm, so every inch that you move your hips out is functionally like 3 or 4 more inches that you get on the lever for them to push. It's crazy. We don't ever see this kind of late stage defense, because if you fuck it up, your arm just chicken wings off your body.
Yeah,
and
pretty much.
It's a 9 to 18 month injury.
Yeah,
because shoulders never heal right. As a guy with a fully torn labrum, partially torn rotator cuff, they don't ever heal right. It's just, this is forever. I can't lift things up with flat handed. They're terrible. It's a terrible injury. She gets out. Yeah. Brianna Ste-Marie went, I don't have enough pressure here to finish this Kimura. Chris Grindatti is willing to fight at this tiny range here and is able to get out. I wanted to look away the entire time this match was happening, but I couldn't, because I got to see what she's doing. I'm fascinated that she is willing to fight this position out in this way.
And her 2 corners for this were not jiu-jitsu people. They were her brother and someone else.
Grindatti?
Yeah, because she did a post about the 2 people, her 2 corners there were not jiu-jitsu people.
Yeah, because she's no longer with Fight Sports. And she left about a year ago.
Yeah, she took family with her, and they were cornering her.
But if you're going to the UK, so that was weird. Yeah. There were a bunch of women on this event that didn't have coaches cornering them.
Yeah.
Ffion had Rosa Walsh in her corner, who's a
local.
Not local. She's
she's Pedigo now. So.
She's Pedigo, but she's been with Ffion for a while now, and we've seen her on Grapple Fest and other stuff.
She's Welsh, right?
I think she's Irish.
She's Irish.
I think she's Irish. Because I think in the Daisy Fresh thing, she said, "Oh, this Irish girl."
Oh, okay.
And I think that's why I think she's Irish. I think she said that. Jara didn't have a corner. Grindatti didn't have a corner. It was just interesting. There were a couple of grapplers that didn't have standard coaching corners, and this is one of the instances. But Brianna Ste-Marie goes, "Okay, I can't get this. I'm gonna go back to this." And I think Daniel Strauss, the post-fight commentary, did a really, really great job of talking and asking the athletes questions, because again, he's competed at a high level as well. He knows what is interesting to grappling fans, and also what he's sort of interested in from what he just saw.
Yeah.
He asked her some really good questions about the finishing, why, do you, it's a question I've asked athletes before. If you have something super, super deep that you almost finish or you almost break, you can either do 2 things with that information. You can either go, cool, I almost broke that guy's shit. I'm going to keep going for that. Yeah. Or, that was the best thing I threw at him and I couldn't break his shit. I'm not going to go for that at all anymore. I'm only going to go for different things.
It always kind of blows my mind, because I reffed a tournament over the weekend, that when somebody's arm is fucked up, if somebody goes into OT, right?
Yeah.
And they're holding their left elbow.
Mm-hmm.
Armbar the left elbow.
Yeah.
In OT, you go after whatever is damaged.
Yeah.
And I watched people not do that. And I was like, it's a
competition.
It's a competition.
Yeah.
If you start looking injured, I'm going to go after whatever you have.
It's injured. The vultures. It's like the MMA thing. But again, it's an interesting kind of thought process to go through. But I love that that Strauss asked that question in the post fight, and hear Brianna Ste-Marie kind of talk about and walk through the process of thinking about that. Because I think you and I have both had that happen in competition, or at least I have had a bunch where it's like I grab something, I yank on it, I pop it or snap it, and then the guy doesn't tap, and you're like, well, I just broke his foot, like. Do I keep going for the foot, or like is he unfoot lockable now, and I go for something else?
You go after it.
And so last time it happened is I went for the other foot. I was like, well, that foot's broken. He's not gonna tap that foot. Let me go for the other foot. But again, it was an interesting judgment call to make in the match, and it's always really cool to hear because you'll get different responses from athletes about like, well, I know it's broken, so I'm going to continue to go after it, or I know it's broken. I probably can't keep breaking it anymore, so I'm just going to, go for something else. But I think more so recently, Mikey's answered the question. Brianna's answered the question. Craig Jones answered the question.
Mikey's sort of an interesting individual.
Yeah. And they've all talked about like, oh no, when it breaks, I keep going for the same leg because I've already broken it, and I'm going to keep like it's easier to injure now, so I'm going to keep going for it. But again, an always interesting question. The finish was cool here. It was
a traditional armbar.
Yeah, it was. It was just like.
So normal day one armbar, which you very seldom ever see in real life.
Yeah, but Brianna Ste-Marie is so good at it. Her guard is so good. She's one of the few people. I listened to a BJJ Mental Models podcast. Yeah. And it was Brianna Ste-Marie talking. They were doing a positional series. And they were just talking. They had her on to talk about her open guard and her closed guard. Yeah. Mostly her closed guard. And it was cool to hear her talk about that as like a modern position. Whereas really nowadays it's not a lot of people play closed guard like they did 10 years ago. Yeah. Or even 15 years ago or 20 years ago. Like most jiu-jitsu nowadays is played in the open guard. And Brianna Ste-Marie is still one that will play a closed guard. And she was talking about a lot of the changes that you have to do kind of in a modern game and how she sets stuff up. So it was cool to see her use some closed guard here in this match and then be able to hit. And you could see like, oh yeah, this is in quotes here, like a day one armbar. Yeah. But
she did it belly down first. She just rolled it.
Because you teach it, because most people at a high level comp like don't play closed guard. Yeah. When you get someone like Brianna Ste-Marie that plays closed guard, you can hit these kind of arm bars. And it's cool to see, I can show this to my students and go like, yeah, if you get really, really good at this like armbar that I showed you when you first came in, you can hit it versus like really, really high level black belts. And that's just cool. Finishes it. Grindatti ends up belly up and then doesn't let it break. And I was so happy that after watching the Kimura initially that she wasn't going to let it break. Yeah. And that's the finish. So,
I didn't know exactly how that was going to go.
I didn't either. And I was really,
like, oh God.
I was really hoping Grindatti wasn't going to let it break after watching the Kimura. But I'm thinking that the Kimura was a flexibility thing. Yeah. And even if you're at that range, if Grindatti's comfortable at that range, she's willing to play there. Yeah. But the armbar, because the elbow kind of gets in the way, like she didn't seem willing to like play that game.
Also, depending on grips, it could also be a shoulder as opposed to an elbow.
Yeah. For the armbar that got finished.
I don't remember how she finished it. If she put it like on her hip or if she did it like straight.
It looked elbow to me.
Okay.
It looked like because when Brianna Ste-Marie finished it, she began to kind of arch and come up. And so it was pushing on the elbow. Maggie never had a chance because she was flat to kind of get the shoulder involved to open the shoulder up, like kind of the Vinny Magalhaes versus Verdum. Okay. That way you can lever the shoulder away. Yeah. Because Grindatti flipped over and landed on her back, you end up flat there, and then it usually attacks the elbow and doesn't attack the shoulder. Okay. So this one, for me, I think it was a standard armbar for the elbow. But very, very good match, filled with excitement, and a really, really nasty close submission earlier. So that does it for the quarterfinals. Moving on to the semifinals, we had two matches. Any kind of thoughts on the quarterfinals?
No. They kind of sort of went the way that I expected the matches. I mean, they went for the favorites for all four matches.
I said it earlier. It's like it's ADCC medalists showing you why. Yeah. And it was, again, no disrespect to the other women on the card. It was just like, oh, your ADCC champions went through. They showed you, why they are so good. Your ADCC medalists, and then in Clay, trials winner, trials medalist before multiple times, showed you why she was so good. Moving on to the semifinals, we had Elisabeth Clay versus Ffion Davies, a toe hold in under 3 minutes.
Yeah, it looked like Ffion just either forgot what she was like. She went so hard at the attack that she just left her leg out.
Yeah,
that was the only thing I could think of, because she was trading attacks, and it looked like she wanted to hit some kind of toe hold footlock on her, and then she got so excited about maybe being in the position that she was in or getting there that she left her leg out, which has happened to many of us.
Yeah, it's happened to Ffion before too, in ADCC 2019. This was interesting because Ffion looked very good. Again, I would watch this match again, like immediately, again, hoping that Fion's not injured here. There was very, very fun back and forth. You saw like subs from both sides. You saw Ffion going for some feet. Elisabeth Clay is, as far as women go, probably one of the best leg lockers in the world for women.
I would say so, yeah.
I'm trying to think of like someone who I would like pin against her to go, oh no, that person's actually a better leg locker. I think Clay's with her inverted knee bar game, with her heel hook game, with her false sweep game, with like the outside 50-50 game, all of those entries, I do not think there's another woman on the planet that is a better leg locker, especially at her level, than her. So it was cool to see Ffion going after these leg locks, and it was like, okay, well, how's Ffion going to do? And then, was it Clay on the? Clay was on the top here, right?
Yeah, Clay. I think my note was that Clay false sweep to backside 50-50, and then I think Ffion like from that position like went after one of her feet, and somehow they got back into
where Ffion was standing, kind of opened, very bladed off stance with one leg forward, and then she opened her leg, and then Ffion seemed to sit at this range that I was curious as to why she was sitting in.
Yeah.
Because it's a range that allows Clay to sort of begin opening up exchanges for the feet without you having the ability to counter or really get away.
Yeah.
And Clay was able to, and Ffion kind of like opened her leg, and then Clay was able to grab the toe hold here, and Ffion didn't immediately start to defend it. She looked to almost like she was going to counter.
Yeah.
But she stopped in the beginning of the counter and didn't all the way commit, and then kind of almost went to backstep, and then almost went to go for kind of the leg on her own, and kind of looked to pass for a second, and then didn't ever go back to defending the foot that Clay had grabbed. And then Clay finishes the toe hold, and it was, again, Clay has a very, very good toe hold game.
Yeah.
And, cranks on Fion's foot, and Ffion taps. It was just, I was very curious, and I'd be curious kind of to see what Ffion says about this, what her thought process was when Clay grabbed the toe hold on her, because it looked like, again, from an outside perspective, that someone who was absolutely not on the level, that she kind of went through three different things and didn't decide on one, and then never went back to the defense on the foot. And so I don't really understand what the thought process was there, and I, again, would be genuinely curious to see.
It might have just been Clay grabbed the foot, and she thought, oh, I'm going to get this faster than Clay can get my foot.
Yeah, either the pass or the counter footlock on her own.
Yeah, I think that makes more sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like Ffion was also trying to get done the match very quickly.
Yeah.
Like she was a lot more...
She was aggressive.
She was a lot more aggressive, and a lot, like if you go between that and like her match with Jara, she didn't have that kind of speed with Jara.
No.
With this, it was like she came for bit, like she immediately started like, and I mean, she went into the legs quick, and it was like, okay, this is what we're playing today.
Which was interesting because we know Ffion has a good leg lock game, but it's an interesting tactical decision to make against Clay, because Clay is so comfortable in all those exchanges, especially Nogi. Yeah. Like in a gi, you can kind of like slow Clay down a lot in those exchanges, but in Nogi, especially when Ffion is not bigger or not is pretty comparably sized to Clay.
Clay's a little bit bigger than Ffion,
but not that much bigger. So it's like you have a little bit of a speed advantage, but Elisabeth can still kind of get under you and very comfortably
she's still known,
lift you.
She's still known for her leg locks.
Yeah, and has been known for the past 6 years.
Yeah, so if you go against someone who's known for their leg locks and you start going after their legs, you got to do it fast.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Ffion looked like she was doing. But again, she gets caught in this weird sort of middle range between countering, attacking, and defending, and Clay is able to finish her. So it was kind of an odd sequence. It looked like Ffion kind of got her foot. You looked at the replay after.
Yeah, it looks kind of nasty, but toe holds always kind of look nasty.
Yeah, well, they can be. I've seen an internal dislocation.
Yeah, it wasn't like that one Grappling Industries picture that goes around.
Yeah, it was one of Fight to Win. I was at one of the Baltimore Fight to Wins where the guy it was an internal dislocation of the foot. And they dislocated the metatarsals. Oh. And the foot was bent in half.
Ooh.
It was.
That's interesting.
It was gross.
Yeah.
It was gross to look at because they carried him backstage. And I was backstage talking to some people and doing interviews. And I was like, that's a gross foot.
Good times.
So it was toe hold.
It's not something that the medics can help you with.
No, they could not. They hauled him off. They was like, we're going to the hospital. So that was that match. Again, I think a big upset.
Yeah.
You could definitely a match that you could have seen going Clay's way, but probably by this.
I would have expected a longer match, but I wouldn't have expected Clay, or I wouldn't have expected Ffion to go into Clay's legs.
Yeah, that was surprising to me. Yeah. Again, with Ffion, I am a person that historically bets on the champions, where it's so I was going to pick. Yeah, it was going to be Ffion and Campo at the end if they're opposite sides of the bracket. That's what I'd pick here. Clay absolutely had the tools to finish the match, and this is an outcome that I could see happening, especially with Fion's history with leg locks and leg lock losses, and Clay's game. And if Clay can get her game off, and it's looked really, really good recently, this can happen. But definitely, I think with taking out your ADCC champion is an upset always. So moving on to the next match, Amy Campo defeats Brianna Ste-Marie via rear naked choke, 9:52.
Yeah.
I think this was 5 or 4 seconds left.
Yeah.
They have it listed as 8, but it was to the wire.
Yeah. And this was a rear naked choke to the side because she didn't have hooks in.
No. She had one, didn't she?
She didn't have any hooks in. She was almost crab riding her.
Yeah.
She was almost crab riding her and grabbed her head. And then her arms were so much longer than Brianna Ste-Marie's head and shoulder that she just freaking locked it up. Mm-hmm. And it was oh, you have that much arm. Oh, this is a problem.
This was very much a finish that was oh, you have that much arm. Yeah. Finish because Campo, interviewing her,
almost like a bulldog, but not really because it's still. It's a bulldog.
But it was almost like a bull. It was similar to a bulldog choke where it's instead of being back head to head with someone. She was almost to the side you would do a clock choke. And if you do a clock choke, but with the grip, that's a bulldog choke because it's the same side arm. And if you go, basically the only thing, I just literally on Friday in my Friday class taught a bulldog choke.
I was there.
Yeah, you were there. Okay,
I was there in your class.
I was this is a deja vu. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we were discussing that, and we were discussing executioners.
The executioner versus the bulldog versus just a regular back crucifix. And so I had to go teach
all
the
these
differences.
Things.
A bulldog choke is just a rear naked choke that you finish to the side with your chest facing the other direction from your opponent. So if your opponent is belly down, you are belly up with the same side arm.
Yeah, and I guess it is because it's almost like a short choke.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the full
Well, you can do a bulldog choke with the full arm in.
Yeah, I don't have full
and you can actually do a reverse bulldog choke if they spin through with the head in and up at the wrong side. I watched it finish an MMA before. It's really, really weird, but the person has to spin into the choke, out of the choke, and get stuck. So this almost finished. Again, Campo has this on Brianna Ste-Marie she's going to do a bulldog choke because she is technically behind her in the rear naked choke position, but you could see that she kind of reached all the way under in a way that is not really common for this kind of choke, and then didn't have the hooks in, and you could tell that she sort of just had enough arm from this position to lock it in and squeeze tight enough and get the choke. I couldn't tell in this choke if Brianna Ste-Marie went out.
Yeah.
It looked on the broadcast. I watched it a couple of times.
So I don't know.
Either it may be one of those I'm tapping as I'm kind of going out and kind of getting a little tired there, but She also could have just been tired for the match because you had to deal with Campo's pressure for 10 minutes on you.
And she does these. Second round. She did these like kind of far away knee slices, like where she like just kind of flies at you knee forward.
Yeah, Campo does.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not the funnest thing to have to deal with.
No, you also have to deal with like Campo dropping all of her weight in you, and then she does it, like you said, far enough away where if you don't get in front of her to kind of eat her weight into you, she's gonna flop past you and then be able to crush you in a top side control, or like get close enough past your knee where she can flatten you. So you have to get your legs back in front, or a leg back in front, either trap her in the half guard or trap her in the knee shield. But doing that with the pressure that Campo continued to do that on, it gets tiring because you have to hold someone up who is definitely, Campo is above 60. Brianna Ste-Marie is under 60 silver medalist at ADCC. So it's like these women are separated by 15 pounds probably normally in normal competition, if not 20 in normal competition. Eating someone's weight that's coming in 20 pounds heavier to you over and over and over in a pro match like this gets you tired. I was just really impressed with the way that Campo finished this because I thought Campo was going to take a pretty clean either decision, or was she up 1 point? She was up 1 point, I think.
I think she was up a point.
Yeah, she was up 1 point.
She had a takedown, so she was up a point.
Yeah, she was up 1 point. I was like, oh, this is going to go Campo's way, but she continues to look for the finish even though she's up, and I can appreciate that. Like it was cool, and in this entire bracket and match so far, this entire event so far, we've had 1 point to win.
Yep. And
that was Ffion versus Giovanna Jara. Every other thing has been a submission win because the women came to bring it in this essentially.
They generally do. It's kind of how it goes with women's jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm. Any other kind of thoughts on this match?
No, that's about it.
It was cool. Moving on to the main event, Elisabeth Clay versus Amy Campo.
Was it the main event?
I thought it was the main event.
It's a finals, yeah.
It's a finals, like the super fight, Owen Livesey versus Chris Weidman. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Well, they called it was Polaris 23, Weidman versus
That's fine. I still think the women's GP was your
Livesey.
main event.
Owen
Livesey.
Livesey.
We'll finally get his name right after you've met him and we've seen him. We've covered him for 2 years at this point.
And I stalk him slightly.
So
just a little bit.
Elisabeth Clay versus Amy Campo. This was, they said on the broadcast, the 5th time that they've met at black belt, and Elisabeth Clay was, so you pulled up, we thought it was the 4th. But Clay and Campo were also competing against each other when they were brown belts, and before and purple belts, and then when Clay was a black belt and Campo was a brown belt, and like the women's records for these two ladies get muddy. And even Elisabeth Clay in her post-fight interview with Dan Strauss talked about this many times at black belt. We have met many times before that at the earlier and colored belts.
Well, and if you think about it, Campo is from Utah, I think. Yeah. And Clay was from Texas.
Alaska.
Yeah, but she was born in Texas, but she was from Alaska.
She spent about...
So she probably would have had to come to...
She was 15 in Alaska.
Okay, so she would have had to come down, when you think about it, to the West Coast to compete if she was going to compete at a high level.
Yes.
Because I don't think they do anything in Alaska.
There's some stuff up in Alaska.
But I mean, they don't do any IBJJF big things.
I don't think there's an Anchorage Open for IBJJF.
I don't think I've ever seen one.
Yeah.
Because I would have been like, hey, that looks fun.
Let's go to Anchorage.
Yeah.
I want to go to Anchorage. It'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think she would have come out. She did West Coast Trials when she was 15, and that was Cali. So...
But yeah, they've seen each other.
They've seen each other a bunch, and we are fuzzy on the exact numbers at brown and black belt, but it's been pretty even recently. So you pulled all the stats.
Yeah, Campo won American Nationals. I believe they were both brown belts at the time, 20 points. Campo won versus Clay in the ADCC trials and the ADCC championships, both points.
Yep.
And then... they met each other in the finals of Absolute Nogi Worlds this year in December with all the roids that we were talking about earlier.
Yep, that event.
And Clay won on points, but it was close points. I don't think it was a significant point gap.
It's usually pretty close, I think.
Yeah, I think they were all pretty close.
They've gone back and forth is what we're getting at. So this was a really cool finals match to see because we just saw it a couple months ago, and the organization and the rule set that we saw it in plays a factor in potentially how this match went.
Yeah. I also noticed that, did you notice Campo? I know, I try.
I'm trying to put it back in your mouth.
Campo handled this match a lot differently than she handled her other matches.
Yeah.
She wasn't as aggressive. She
knows Clay's game.
Yeah.
Like, they have competed against each other many, many times, a couple of times a year for the last couple years, at least, usually in a finals, usually at a big event where it means a lot. You get a feeling for someone's game. We see this, again, with certain athletes, but in women's jiu-jitsu, you deal with it. You know, you see the same people.
Yeah, the same people over
and over again because, you know, it's a smaller pool, and you get a feeling for people's game and like what they do and how they compete. I think that it would be almost weird to not have Campo approach this match differently, especially when you've just had 2 successful outings versus Clay at ADCC under that rule set. Polaris is a pretty similar rule set to ADCC with some minor differences. Specifically, if you fall back...
Points.
If you fall back in IBJJF, if you are on top and you fall back for a footlock and the person that's on the bottom stands up in IBJJF, it's a sweep. Regardless of who initiated, the person on the bottom is awarded 2 points for now being the person on the top.
Yeah.
In ADCC, if you are on top and you are controlling, and you, through no persuasion of the person on the bottom, fall back for a footlock, don't get the footlock, the person on the bottom stands up, no points, because the person on the top initiated the footlock exchange. And so what it does, in ADCC's kind of thought process for this is, if you're on top and you want to elect to take the bottom position to go for a sub, we don't want to stand in the way of you going for a sub and looking to finish the match just because you've elected to take a different position where you think you have an advantage here. And so that's the thought process. Polaris uses the IBJJF style where it's like any change of position, regardless of who initiated, is scoring. Because their most recent match, I think, not most recent, their 2 prior matches that Campo had won were under ADCC rules. When Campo goes back in their match for a footlock and Clay stands up, it gives Elisabeth Clay a point.
Yeah.
In the Polaris rules.
And she doesn't really even fully stand up. She just gets to her knees.
Yeah.
She gets her butt off the mat.
Yep.
Which is IBJJF rules.
Which is IBJJF rules, which is what which is similar to what Polaris
that's the whole,
is using.
And the whole thing is you watch Clay's face because she looks at the ref.
Yeah.
Like she does the move in IBJJF you do that once you get your points, you stare at the ref until he gives you your points.
Yep. I teach all of the athletes I coach to do the same thing. It's like you get your points, you settle your position, you stare at your ref. As long as you are established in your position until your ref gives you your points. He's like, if I'm coaching you, I'm going to be screaming for your points.
Yeah.
Once you get it, you move on, but you pause there until your ref gives you your points so that there's no question about it. And you see Elisabeth Clay do this during the match. And I was like, oh, yeah, she looked at the ref. The ref goes, yeah, it's points. There are points awarded. In the post-fight, Amy Campo went, oh, yeah, I didn't realize that there had been points scored against me till the end of the match when I looked over at the scoreboard and saw the points. I didn't realize that there were points in the match. In those last 3 minutes, I would have approached that last 3 minutes of the match very differently, probably with some more intensity, had I thought that there were points on the board. And so she basically goes, look, I made an error. That's why I didn't fight, super hard in those last couple minutes when I was down, because I didn't realize I was down, and she probably didn't realize she was down because they had competed recently in ADCC, and they had both been training for ADCC, even though they had the IBJJF match recently.
Yeah.
Polaris being its own and being a modified point set, she probably just in her head went, oh, I'm going to go for this footlock, gave up the position, went, right, which not going to matter in this organization. So, an interesting kind of tactical error.
Yeah.
That is pretty uncommon at this level, but again, it kind of hammers the point I make a lot of times, which is like, hey, know your rules and make sure you know your rules. And then if you're not going to have a coach with you,
I think she had a coach with her.
Make sure your coach is yelling the points at you and yelling that tactical information so that you can go and make the decisions that you need to make in order to, because if she didn't realize she was down and her coach didn't realize, it's like, that's something
then you would have screamed it at her. Because I would have been like, hey, you're down.
Yeah, hey, you're down points. That,
you're down
you
points.
Gave us the points that you got to get on top.
You need to go.
And we've seen absolutely late in matches, Campo turn it on and go to that next gear that we really didn't see here. And that in her post-fight, that explains why she didn't do that. Because, again, if you don't think you're down, you think it's even, and you think you're on top and you're winning, like, or you're in a bottom position winning, why would you change your strategy at all if you think that you are in the driver's seat there if you know that you're down on points? So Elisabeth Clay takes that. I am looking forward to watching these two women compete against each other for years to come. I think they are two of the top people at above 60.
Yeah, and they're both super young. So
they're both super young, and they're both super good, and they both have exciting games. They also both aggressively look for the finish and look to impose their game, and they are very much... We very rarely see like pensive, long-range tactical matches from both of them. They are both very willing to kind of meet you head on and fight you and go for the sub and either try to take your back or try to take your leg off. And I really appreciate that these are the two women that are at the forefront of the heavier weights right now, in Nogi especially, because it's like, hey, you want to come for the queen, you better be ready to go, and you better be ready to try to take that title from the queen there. And that's cool. We don't have, we have two women there that are not going to stall you out to a victory. They want to fight you for it. And that's awesome. That brings the entire level of the divisions up in a way that I cannot wait for this conversation in 3 years from the talent that grows from trying to take these two women down. And
do it with a nice pair of fake lashes on the entire time.
Props to her. I was excited. I was like, look at that. Having a good time. So Elisabeth Clay takes it. Again, I'll talk about kind of my thoughts on the entire event once we finish the super fight match.
Yep.
But it was a great bracket. Moving on to the super fight, and it was a super fight indeed.
Yeah,
Owen Livesey versus Chris Weidman.
Livesey.
What? Give me more time. Say it slowly because I'm not that smart.
Livesey.
Owen Livesey.
Okay.
Livesey. How many years?
I know.
Run trials, all that stuff.
We've all been missing.
This was exactly so. We previewed this last week.
Yeah. And I thought it was going to be either really, really slow or really fun, and it was fun. I also realized that Weidman is an on-contract UFC fighter. Yeah.
So there's no footlocks.
Yeah.
So my entire discussion last week of like, oh, Owen can go for the feet. And it's like, I think you texted me like midweek. Or
I did.
Simon texted me. What are you?
No, I did. I was like, hey. There's no footlocks.
And I went like, I was like, oh yeah, because this rule that I know about, that I've known about for a long time. I can't believe I've forgotten
this show. Because Weidman hasn't fought in the UFC for a bit, minus this like splitting in half.
Yeah.
So
remembering he's on contract with the UFC is kind of like, I slipped my mind. No leg locks in play here, so it became a battle of the bulls, wrestling head on. Owen's kind of nogi judo, and Chris's American wrestling.
Yeah.
And it was awesome.
It was fun.
Usually when you see a stand-up battle like this in a jiu-jitsu tournament, it is dog shit.
Yeah, well,
this was not.
Part of this was also, and Weidman said when they interviewed him, that his plan was for the first 5 minutes to push the pace. Mm-hmm. And then he realized, it doesn't matter if I push the pace, because Owen was tired. Owen was very tired.
Yeah.
But he was still willing to throw the shit out of you.
I love that though, because so this match had some really great.
But I couldn't tell if he was actually tired or if he just acted like he was that
I think
tired.
Owen was tired.
I think he was tired.
Especially at the end.
When he didn't want to get up?
When he didn't want to get up. So there's two moments here. One, he's holding his adorable child in the interview, and he's like out of breath, and he basically tells Dan Strauss to like, give me a second, man. Like, he starts speaking, and then he like has to stop speaking because he can't catch his breath.
Yeah.
And then he goes, and then he stops the interview, and then starts the interview again, and like continues. So he was out of breath. There was a moment where Chris Weidman pushed them out of bounds, or like Owen, they went out of bounds for some reason. I forget exactly.
And Owen stayed on his ass.
And Owen kind of sat there for a second, and you saw Chris go, "Cool, man, get back up, like get back kind of the center, like you see in like traditional wrestling where you want to tire a guy out, you want to get back to the center." And it was just and
he took his time.
It was just very funny. Even commentary kind of brought it up. Like, Weidman's ready to kind of keep pushing because he knows Owen's tired. Owen was just laying there like, hey, man, I'm going to take a second. Ref's going to bitch at me. I'm going to get up. I'm going to get back to the center in a second here. Good. But I'm going to take my time that I'm allowed before the ref starts bitching at me while Chris is back up and like ready to go. It was interesting. Again, we talk about it, and we've talked about it for years on the show. It takes two athletes willing to engage and push the pace to have matches like this. This could have very easily been kind of match that we had with Owen and Josh Hinger, like a tentative kind of stalemate. Both guys are not really willing to engage super hard or overcommit, go to the front headlocks. Both Owen and Chris got the front headlocks here. Both Owen and Chris got takedowns going here.
Yeah.
Owen had some great trips. Eventually, towards the later end of the match, started getting Chris Weidman down.
Yeah.
Controlling him on the mat for a little bit. Chris pushing the pace on the feet, making Owen very, very tired, and leveraging him being the bigger man, having great low wrestling style shots that Owen was working to capitalize on, go for front headlocks and go for guillotines on. But Weidman's like, hey man, I fight in the UFC. I'm the 4-time middleweight champion. You're probably not going to snap me into a guillotine on this shot that I've been doing since I was 5.
And he kept on trying to get, or at least Owen was getting the double unders. And then he would I guess it's a foot sweep. Is it a foot sweep?
Yeah, foot sweep.
There's double unders and you kind of turn them. And
they actually barai. I think it's the name of the foot sweep in judo.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah. It's basically you lift up and then you can do it to either side. We saw it actually at Campo, Virginia. Zach and I had commentary for. We saw a guy that was doing it a bunch. Yeah. You can either sweep to the same side, so you double underhooks and you lift and turn, almost like you're going to do a lat drop with the body, but then you sweep the foot out. Yeah. And it's, again, a throw we see Owen use a ton. Yeah. And then you do it. You can do it to the long side too. So you can throw to either side using that double unders.
He tried the fireman carry too. I told
you. He did.
I told you he was going to try it.
You told me he was going to try it.
He would try it at least.
You. They got into a position where Weidman had stopped a shot and stopped a throw from Owen.
And his head was low.
Owen's head got low.
He went for it.
And he got closer than I thought he was going to get to. And Chris did a really good job of backing away and getting back up.
Well, but that's a wrestling takedown. That's something that he's learned to.
Something that Chris Weidman hasn't learned how to defend against the fireman.
Yeah.
But it was cool. It's a risky throw to go for. We see Owen go for it a lot, but I was impressed.
He also knows how to get out of it. He knows how to bail from it fast.
A lot of wrestlers will do it and then get stuck in either back crucifix or get back taken. That's one thing that I didn't really consider. We've seen Owen get got for it before. Yeah. We saw him get got for it at trials versus who did he lose trials to?
The guy who won trials.
Not Mateus, not Szynski.
Szynski didn't win trials. Freaking
Taza did. But no, who? I'm blanking on who won European. Owen O'Flanagan.
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw Owen O'Flanagan
at 99.
88.
Oh yeah, because he got in at 99, but he wasn't a 99.
I believe so. Yeah. So yeah, Owen O'Flanagan. We've seen Owen get hit with it before.
But I'm trying to think who took Owen out at trials. Now this is going to bother me.
It was Owen O'Flanagan.
Was it?
I believe so. I could be wrong about that. It is off the top of my head, having not looked at the results of the second European trials for
I probably have them
a couple of months now.
Okay. Just keep on going and I will look.
But yeah, it was really cool to see Owen. He does have a really good ability to both throw that and then get out of it in a way that we see a lot of people, especially people that don't come from a judo background, people that come from a wrestling background typically don't have the ability to get out of that throw in a submission grappling context as well as Owen gets out of it. He's able to avoid the crucifix there that's available at the lower weights.
Oh, the time that we saw it go wrong was him versus Hunter Colvin.
Hunter.
That was at Polaris 22.
Okay.
And he went to a fireman and got his back taken.
That's what it was. I thought it was Owen.
That was Hunter. Well, it was Owen, but...
I'm sorry, I thought it was Owen O'Flanagan.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hunter Colvin.
It was Hunter Colvin. And it was at the last Polaris.
I knew we had seen it go wrong before, but...
I forget who he lost to at Trials. Because I think Trials was when I first found him. And I was like, oh, that guy's interesting.
Look at this judo guy.
I like that guy.
So... Yeah, he has a really good ability to get out of it. And he clears his head in a way and he turns his back in a way where you don't have the ability to get behind him usually unless you're super dynamic and will jump on stuff like a guy like Colvin will.
Yeah.
And Weidman being so much bigger and being so much taller probably didn't have the body or the speed to be able to capitalize on that in the way to get to Owen's back. And so that made it, especially from where he threw it, Weidman was kind of leaned over already. Yeah. Owen was down, his knee was down, and he was able to pick through and dump to try to go for it. And then Chris pushed out of it, and it was cool, and you were correct. He did go for it. And I kind of had to, I was surprised he went for it. But given the context and the positioning, it made a lot of sense.
I don't know.
Overall, I think what wins... So what do you think won Owen the match? I have what I think won him the match.
I think the very end, the last sequence, because they went back and forth with taking each other down. And then whenever they went down, like both of them popped back up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, Owen threw him and they were kind of down for a little bit and then he got off back up.
Yeah.
And then Owen threw him again. And that time, that was like the whole side control. He gets to half guard. He kind of goes into Weidman's half guard, but I think at that point he was tired and just kind of wanted to
I think he was
chill.
trying to keep Weidman down to like, and this is what I think I think won the match is like.
And then it was just he just controlled him.
Yeah.
He like ground him out for the last.
It was
like,
you got the
seconds.
takedown on Chris Weidman, and then you were able to control him. He goes in the half guard because he wants to prevent Chris Weidman from getting back up, and they're both kind of tired at that point. And Owen goes, "Look, I can keep him in the half guard. I can cement this as a takedown that actually results in me having some top position control in a place that I put us.
Yeah.
If nothing else kind of happens for the match, you have a bunch of kind of evener exchanges on the feet that you can make an argument for either guy to win. And then you have one sequence that gets it to the mat.
And you kind of had
some top position
You
control.
kind of had to have that because Weidman, in all honesty, controlled the pace for most of the match.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you have someone controlling the pace and you have kind of an equal, I thought for whatever reason that Weidman had less takedowns, but then I started when I watched it and actually started counting.
Yeah,
like Weidman had at least 2.
Yes.
Owen had at least 2. He had a couple other, but they were all like right at the out of bounds mark.
Yeah,
like he would throw him and it was like right at the edge, and they wouldn't give it to him at the end.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was. Again, I thought it was tactically very, very good. And then Owen, at the end, chooses, like, okay, I control here. Because, sorry, my point I was going to make earlier before I got off track just now. Yeah. I was really impressed that Chris came in and dictated the pace.
Yeah.
Like, that is something we do not see typically from MMA fighters coming back into submission grappling, especially versus high-level guys. That surprised me, and it was great to see. I hope that if Polaris continues to have on, like, MMA fighters, that they will do this, because this is always great to see when you have a guy who is bigger and stronger and still has a great, depth of talent in Chris Weidman, pushes the pace, because then you get exciting matches where the grapplers get to try to counter.
They both weighed in around like 94 kilos.
Yeah, but Chris is like 6'2", and like
he's a good head taller.
A brick shithouse of a man, and so is Owen, but
Owen's
not as tall.
Like a solid kind of. It's a different body type. Yeah. That's all it is.
Overall, it was a great match. I was amped for it.
I was kind of happy that Livesey also didn't just keep on foot sweeping the bad foot. Because I was like, oh.
After we saw the foot locks earlier in the day, I was kind of like, if we can just have like a regular, and if Chris Weidman not break his leg again, especially with this heartfelt post-fight interview and speech,
I was like, oh,
talking about his family, get back to the UFC.
Yeah, I was like,
it was a very nice moment. Honestly, any other thoughts on the match itself?
No, the match was great.
Overall,
I enjoyed it.
I love what Polaris is doing. I love that they're not doing just decisions. I love the point scoring. I love how it works. I love that they are doing it like this. The pacing was great. I sat down, and a lot of these cards, especially UK cards, they come on like midday Saturday for us.
It started at like the undercard started at 10.
I love it.
And the main card started at 2.
And a lot of times Saturday I'm super, super busy, and so I can't commit like midday to watch these cards. Polaris, I sat down anticipating watching a couple matches. I started with the first match of the card, I think, which was of the women's card. That was Ffion versus Jara. I started with that. And then
I know I was surprised.
I was going to watch like one of the matches and then catch it in the replay.
I was driving to Jersey, and my car tells me, like, when I get messages, they come up on my screen, and I kept on seeing Maine's updates of Polaris, and I'm like, oh wow, Maine's actually watching Polaris. Yeah. I'm driving through Jersey, and I just keep on going,
But I anticipated watching a couple matches and then like catching the replay because I had things to do, and then I looked at the clock, I was like, I'll push it back, and I just sat down. I watched the entire Polaris card, and it was nowadays I don't have as much opportunity to do that frequently. We have to catch a lot of these events on replay to be able to sit down and actually enjoy an event enough to watch it live and watch the live broadcast. The pacing was great. The matchups were great. I love how it went.
I had like 4 people update me on the main event and on the Weidman Livesey match. Like I literally got a bunch of messages at the same time. It was very nice.
Did you see him? So yeah, it was great. Honestly, I love what Polaris is doing. I want them to continue to run cards like this. I hope that the Ryan Hall versus Ash Williams card runs the same way. The pacing is great. The formatting is great. The announcing is great. Overall, Love what Polaris is doing. Can't wait to see them run more events.
It was a great event. It was on Fight Pass. So if you want to go back and watch it, that's where it lives.
Yep. Let's move on to Sogi.
Yeah, so
we have a couple matches we want to talk about here. You
Sogi,
kick it off.
the Winter Wars, and that was in Long Island. So we're going to start a little bit further back, but so they had a middleweight bracket. It had Chris Weidman.
Yeah.
Which we've seen him mostly in submission-only series.
I think that's
and then
where
I think we saw him at maybe like Midwest Finishers or one of those events.
Yes, I think that's correct.
Because he's like Chicago-ish.
Illinois.
He's like Illinois.
We have exhausted.
Like I want to say he's Illinois-ish. Anyway, so we had him in this bracket. He wound up losing to one of the gentlemen that were in the finals, and the finals was Enrique Galarza from Silver Fox versus Felipe Cesar Silva from Unity.
Which is honestly a really great finals for them. Like both these guys we see pretty frequently in the New York, New Jersey, like East Coast scene. Yeah. So looking at the bracket, I was like, all right, these two guys could definitely go far. And when I did the Unity seminar, Felipe was one of my, he was in one of the groups that I was in, and he gave me a look at one point that he was like one of those do you know jiu-jitsu looks, because I had no idea what was going on. So that is your interaction with Felipe.
Yeah, but it was like at the end of a 2-hour seminar, and at the very end was when they started teaching all this like fancy guard, like
it was Leandro Lopez
seminar, and it was I was exhausted.
You were a little toast,
and that's not my wheelhouse. So anyway, we had that match, which was a great match. Enrique Galarza winds up getting a footlock on Silva, a pretty nasty one. Silva screams at the end. I don't know how bad it was, or
again, I hope
you can't really see much, but
it was quick.
Yeah, he wins that match, and he wins the middleweight championship for that. They also had Max Hansen versus Diogo Hannibal Oliveira, who is an MMA fighter. I tried to look up his record, couldn't find much about it. But we had Max Hansen go for some leg attacks, and then go from do the whole lower body, upper body, kind of transition back and forth. Go to a Kimura, and then on an armbar from reverse triangle, kind of like we saw in the ladies in Polaris.
Similar, a little different setup, but it was
similar. I mean a different setup, but very similar to what we saw.
Yeah.
So we had that, and then we went into Keith Krikorian versus Andrew Solano.
This was a fun match. A lot of pushing from both guys.
Yeah, and into wall after wall, and then Keith is like, "Screw this, I'm just sitting down."
Yeah, that was very cute. I think I forget which reset it was, but Keith gets pushed on the wall and kind of looks like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
You could see Keith just kind of get, not frustrated is the right word.
Yeah.
But just all right, I'm done with getting pushed into the wall again, because I'm not getting taken down.
And Andrew Solano is an essential black belt from JT Torres. Yeah. Very game, very around. We see him in tournaments all the time.
Yeah.
But, we have Keith. He comes up from a single leg to a body lock and does a rear naked choke. That was the one I think I was thinking about, because he did a rear naked choke with no hooks.
Yes.
'Cause he did it from a crab ride, but they were kind of in the people.
It was close to the edge of the mat, and then you saw I almost was curious if they're going to reset. I'm happy they didn't reset here.
Yeah.
But it was definitely on the line where it's like, oh, you're getting close to a reset or a potential reset, and Keith kind of climbs up. I think the whole match is 4 minutes.
Yeah, it's not
long. The entire video, I think, is 4 minutes.
Yeah,
long.
It's not a super long match, but it definitely is an interesting match.
Yeah, Keith is just, again, that dude is a hard dude to beat.
He is,
and I'm happy you did a seminar with him last week.
Last weekend, yeah. He did a bunch in the area. He did 2 at Vault, which is outside of Philly. He did 2 6 a.m. classes at Vault. You had to be a Vault member to go, which kind of made me sad. But then I was like, Miranda, do you really want to get up at 4
to go to
Vault and train? So,
I've always wanted to do a Keith seminar. I've talked to Keith a bunch. I've interviewed him a couple of times, and I've talked to him at length over the years. We've been covering him since Purple. Yeah. So it's really cool to watch him.
I don't know if he's staying in the area, if he's going back. I don't know. Because I'm assuming he came up for this match.
Yeah.
And that's why he did a ton of seminars.
Where's he? He's California still.
California, yeah.
Yeah, so I assume he's going back, but
he's
moving around a little bit. So, again, great match, great finish.
Yeah, and then we go to the main event, which was Pat Shingoli versus Alex Nemeth. Alex Nemeth's black belt, kind of local level, I would say, black belt.
Yeah, we see around pretty frequently.
Yeah, I mean, but we see him in Fury. We see him in. I'm trying to think of a lot of the
East Coast stuff.
Like a lot of the East Coast stuff. Yeah. I'm sure he did trials.
Yep. This is Pat. A lot of for this match is Pat looking to again do what Pat does. So sit, look to go into his legs.
But surprisingly, like they both stood for a while, and Pat showed that he can do a throw by, which is kind of not Pat's something.
I think guys, Pat's he's a 16, 17-year-old kid, and I think he's very flexible. And people are still trying to figure out exactly, especially at like more tournaments that aren't like EBI and like tournaments that aren't like big heavy name tournaments like Mason Fowler and like Nick Rodriguez. People are still trying to figure out like, okay, where can you take him? Like, what can he do?
The throw by attempts were good, but it was your typical larger gentleman wrestling.
Yeah, it was a heavyweight EBI match where you're gonna it's very possible to either have a slow, grindy match or a kind of outwork, like both guys kind of playing for the overtime, not really willing to commit super, super hard in dangerous sequences with big people that can end up on top of you very easily.
Yeah. And Pat showed that he had an understanding of overtime and wins by ride time.
Yeah.
And is now the heavyweight champion of Soji.
Yeah. So
I think he retains it because I want to say he was.
Last match was against Will Bullock, I think. And I don't remember if that was for the title. I think that might have been for the title. I think he's had that for a little bit because Soji is like him and his dad's organization.
It's his dad's organization.
And so I think he's had that for a little bit. That's when we kind of first saw him. So he at least retained. He defends it. I think.
I believe that was a defense.
Yeah. So
there was some other matches, but that was the.
Those are the big ones on Soji.
Those were the big ones. That was a fun event to watch.
Yeah. So next week I think
and that's on Flow.
Yeah, it's on Flow now, which is good.
So and then coming up on Saturday we have on Flow Subversion Equinox from Australia.
That should be fun.
And
I love the Australian events.
Jeremy Skinner. Well, we missed one too. We missed one last weekend, but there was only one match that I really knew who was in it. It was a gi one. It was last weekend, and Jones Leary was in it.
Levi Jones Leary.
But I think he was. I don't remember if it was gi or no gi. Truthfully, I just know
probably gi with Levi
Jones Leary had black hair, and it completely threw me off because I kept on looking for his hair because it's always like blonde or some random color.
Blonde,
and so
I'm
looking at
blue.
the pictures and I can't find him. And I'm like, where's he at? And yeah. He was there, but he had black hair, which I've never seen him with black hair before.
Huh.
But I saw him. He was on a match, and I forget what that was. Actually, I have it written down because we were going to talk about it last week, and then I completely.
You were sick. I was sick the week before.
Yeah.
You were sick last week. We did 2 remote shows back to back. The audio sync messed up everything.
It was Battleground Grappling in Australia.
Yeah.
Was last week. And
coming week we got Jeremy Skinner and Ash Williams.
Yeah.
So Ash Williams again, hot off the announcement for Polaris versus Ryan Hall.
Yep.
This is a super fun matchup.
Yeah.
This is winnable for both guys.
Yep. And it's sub only, but IBJJF rules.
Yeah. So there's no points.
Yeah.
So.
But it's judge's decision. There's no overtime either.
Right. Skinner's been a B team for a while. Then he went. I forget exactly where Skinner is now.
He was in Sydney. He's in Sydney, Australia.
But he went to B team.
He went to B team.
ADCC.
Yeah, and then he was up in like the Ohio area because remember he fell into a couple tournaments and we were like, why is there an Australian?
Why is Jeremy Skinner? Why is Jeremy Skinner in these?
And all of a sudden he was like in Midwest Finishers and he was in like, I think he was in a Twisted Church. And I was like, why is...
Church.
And then he was like in something in New York. And I was like, oh,
he's on tournament circuit.
Yeah. So he did the circuit a little bit.
This one, we see Skinner compete pretty frequently, but I am more familiar with Williams' game here. I'm going to hedge Williams with the understanding that Skinner is... At any point in time, Jeremy Skinner... He won trials. He's really, really good. At any time, he's going to make that like breakout performance into the bigger stage.
I would only give Jeremy Skinner the advantage because Ash is coming from Europe, and
You think the flight's going to kill him?
That's like a 30-hour flight?
No, Australia to...
I don't know.
No, so it's 20 hours for us.
It was 24 hours when I went to Australia.
No, it's 15 and a half from LA. Or sorry, it's 14 and a half from LA.
Yeah, but we had add 6 to that.
Add 5.
Okay.
So it's for total. So Europe is I think closer.
Well, they go the other way, don't they?
I don't
Do they go they go like across China?
I don't think the flight is I don't think the flight is more than 15 hours.
No, but I mean, I don't think it's a direct. I think you have to go through places.
I think London to Sydney. Or maybe London, Abu Dhabi to Sydney. I don't remember.
Yeah,
I've looked at the flight path before. You think jet lag will be a factor in this
I think
match?
it will be because that's ridiculous.
It's definitely possible.
I mean, he should come in a couple days ahead of time.
I think he will. Ash is dangerous everywhere. And again, thinking back to like his Grapple Fest match with Keith Krikorian is just like there is not a single place in that match where Ash isn't dangerous. I don't think he's going to be able to leg lock Jeremy Skinner. Because Jeremy Skinner is a guy that has really, really good leg locks training with like all the guys in Australia.
Yeah.
For all those years, and Craig and Lachlan and now and again. But I don't know where. I don't think Skinner can out wrestle Ash Williams. But again, all his time at B Team in that ADCC room,
true.
What new skills have you brought? And like he's looked good at Midwest finishers. Like he's got a really well-rounded game that I just don't know how it's going to mash up with Ash Williams. I am really excited for this one. I'm going Ash because, I hate to say it, I am more familiar with his titles because he holds the title at Grapple Fest.
Okay.
And I've watched him for a few more years than Jeremy Skinner. But even that's not true because you were watching Skinner when he was a purple belt. Yeah. And like I've probably been following Skinner for more years.
I have no idea. I have no idea how this is going to go.
Yeah. I'm guessing it's going to be there's going to be a portion of the match that's going to both guys are going to wrestle. Yeah. And then I'm guessing that Ash is probably going to pull, and then I'm guessing that Ash is probably going to go into the legs. Skinner's going to try to counter into the legs. We're going to see an attempt at a back take. They're going to see the match kind of play in at range again, where you're going to see whoever ends up on top in that exchange being a little more tentative. I think if Skinner ends up on top, he's a taller guy. He's going to have to play further at range because Ash is going to be able to easily invert or be willing to invert into the legs because Skinner's a bit of a taller guy. I think if Skinner ends up on the bottom, we're going to see Ash play a closer range to prevent being lifted up and elevated by Skinner's game and taken up and over. I think this is a close match. Seeing someone get to the back wouldn't surprise me. Seeing a rear naked choke wouldn't surprise me, or a quick leg lock. I don't think it'll probably be a quick leg lock because of just how both these guys play and where their strengths are. But I think both guys are probably going to actively be hunting for the back because the leg locks are going to be kind of somewhat similar. I think Ash has one of the best scramble to the back games at the weight, which is why I'm going to give him the advantage. But again, I'm curious to see what new stuff Skinner has picked up in kind of his recent run of training camps that I haven't seen.
I do not know. I have no opinion on this.
That's what I got.
I thought about this, and I still
week.
Haven't come up with anything. And then Josh Saunders, which was the heavyweight or the plus 99 Asian Trials winner, is going against a Luke Rosia. Or Rosu.
The name sounds familiar.
He's a French Dean Lister black belt who's undefeated in MMA.
The name sounds really familiar, and it bothers me because I don't remember
Luke
where
Rousseau,
I've seen the name.
Rousseau.
Luke Rousseau.
Yeah.
And I'm blanking. I'm blanking on who it is.
I don't know.
I think it'll be fun.
I mean, I don't know.
Josh Saunders is looking better and better every time you see him, and so this will be fun. It'll be kind of a measuring stick for where he's at, and just kind of. We'll see who, Luke Rousseau looks. And then we also have Pans next week.
Yep. I will be there for part of it. So we got some listing of some of the people that are going to be in the brackets. We have Marigali coming back at ultra heavyweight.
Yep. In the gi. So for not the
that means Danaher's going to be there.
You think he'll coach him in the gi?
He says he's under his team now, so I'm assuming Danaher's going to be there.
All right.
I'll find out.
We'll find out. That'd be curious.
I'll try to find him. I'll try to find him and stand beside him and creepily stare at him and see what happens.
Very tall. Every time I stand next to him.
I've never actually physically been in the same presence.
He's got to be like 18 inches taller than me.
Really?
Dude, he towers over me.
Is he a big dude?
He's a big dude. He's a tall dude. He's like tall and lanky in that way. Yeah. I spoke to him a little bit at West Coast Trials right after the announcement for him that he was going to do it this time. Because he got announced in 2019.
Oh, you're talking about Marigali.
Yeah,
I was talking about Donaher.
Oh, no, he's not that tall.
Oh, okay.
No, he's a little bit taller. I've talked to him a little bit.
Oh, I have been in the same room as Donaher.
Yeah, I've talked to him. Yeah. I talked to him a little bit.
I went to a seminar of his, and you couldn't hear what he was actually saying.
Speaks very quietly.
Very quietly.
So, Marigali, any other names you got?
No, I didn't look at they had pictures.
It's all the registrations for Pans.
It's everybody that you think should be there and more. And
probably Pans. So it's Gi Pans. Again, one of the first big fun majors of the year, so it should be fun to talk about next week. We'll run through all the finals matches and hopefully a couple of the matches if we get a chance to. But majors are always tough for us.
It's not next weekend. It's the weekend. It's the weeks after. It's like 2 weeks. It starts Wednesday. But
what's the date on Pans?
It's going to be, if the 18th is Saturday, the 19th would be Sunday.
Oh,
it's like not until the 20th.
I'm reading your notes upside down, and I read 12th, and I was like, that's today.
21st.
And that's 21st because it's upside down. So that makes sense. So that'll be exciting. So next week we got that. Anything fun for you this week?
I'm trying to think. I don't think so. I'm going to ref on Saturday at Good Fight.
Fun.
And then I go to Chicago.
You've been doing a lot more reffing recently.
It's because I was hurt. I didn't have anything else to do. I was bored.
That's what I did. I did the same thing. I reffed way more when I was hurt.
Yeah, and also I was between gyms, and when you're between gyms, you kind of have to do something.
Fill your time. And it's also it's good practice and exercise.
Yeah.
And so I want to go to one of the ADCC ref things soon because they're starting to do the opens now.
Yeah.
And I'm looking.
Oh, they announced that. That's something we should have said news.
I forgot.
They announced Orange County.
Yep.
In I want to say the end of April.
Mm-hmm.
Like April 29th?
Something like
that.
Mid-April, end of April. And so I'm looking at doing judging, not reffing. I'm not a huge fan of reffing. I like to judge more than ref because I like doing the point stuff. That's more my preference. And so I'm looking to do some more judging for ADCC coming up in the future. And so hopefully for some of the opens, I'll get a chance to go out and judge some matches because that's a lot of fun, and I enjoy doing that.
Because why
not? A lot
of
work, but it's fun.
So why not?
So, other than that, I don't think I have anything else going on. I'm just kind of...
I don't think Pans is tested, so we don't have to worry about USADA showing up.
I think it is.
Is it?
I think all majors now.
Man.
We'll never know.
All
so we'll
majors?
find out. We'll find out in a couple weeks if Pans is tested, and we will...
Well, I'll tell you because USADA will have a thing.
Yeah, you'll tell me.
And I'll go because last time I went to their little thing and I got USADA pens and I got USADA sunglasses. I'll try to get more USADA gifts.
USADA, wear on the podcast.
And then, if we have any more questions,
look, if you have any
questions, send them in, and I will ask USADA when I'm there. Because I don't care.
Testing, we're gonna eliminate a lot of the guys really quickly.
I know.
And then maybe they're gonna have to stop doping, and then they're gonna get tired really quick, and that would be disappointing.
Well.
So that's all I got. Before we get into this big rabbit hole, you got anything else, Miranda?
Nah, that's it.
All right, that was listening to the show. I'm your host, Maine, my co-host,
Miranda.
And we have the Grappling around to the mat, whatever it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.